Hey everyone, this is three-time Super Bowl champion Brent Jones, and you're listening to Jim on Base.
Welcome back to another episode of the Jim on Base Show. For today's very special guest, we have on a former tight end for the 49ers, a three-time Super Bowl champ. He's a four-time Pro Bowler as well, and played 11 seasons in the NFL. Please welcome the great Brent Jones. Brent, thanks for coming on.
Jim, what a pleasure it is to be on.
Yeah, it's good to see you. And we were just talking before we started going. You're in Texas right now, right?
I am, believe it or not, born and raised in the Bay Area, lived in the South Bay, lived in the East Bay, and then, just kind of got a wild hair to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to try something different. So we moved to Texas about 7.5 years ago. Both my daughters followed us here. And my parents eventually. So we got the whole crew here in Texas, but we follow everything in the Bay Area like we still live there. We're obsessive 49er fans, and everybody's all in on the Niners.
Awesome. Well, I can tell Texas is growing on you because you got a cowboy hat behind you there.
I did. You know what? It's funny. I didn't even notice that, but I guess I do got a cowboy hat. You know what, Jim? It feels awesome to wear Niners stuff here and just taunt the Cowboy fans because we've owned them for so long, and they're just so frustrated. And I gotta say, it feels so good because everybody in Texas thinks they're a Cowboy fan, except for our family, which is spectacular.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, you mentioned your daughter's there, so I was curious, how many kids do you have, and do you have grandkids now, or?
So I have two daughters, Rachel and Courtney. They're both athletes. They both played soccer in college, and Courtney has two boys, and so I have two grandsons, 4 and 6. And you're gonna laugh. This is a hilarious story. About a year and a half ago, they kind of hit the point where they're all into football and they're all into Niners. And the oldest thinks he's Christian McCaffrey, and the youngest thinks he's Brock Purdy.
There you
And
go.
I'm like, okay, this is going to be a phase. They are obsessed. They probably have 5 jerseys each. They have like 10 t-shirts, 10 hats. And the youngest, the 4-year-old, had this has to be a record. He had a Brock Purdy themed birthday. And we're like, oh, Kason, I don't know. I don't know if your friends will know who Brock Purdy is. It doesn't matter. We're having a Brock Purdy birthday. So he had fat heads, he had footballs, he had all these pictures of Purdy. It was hilarious. And they're obsessed. We brought him, ironically, to the NFC Championship game last year. And while we were, of course, they had just turned 4 or just turned 6, and the young guy hadn't even turned 4 yet, and they were in the stands going crazy, standing on their seats the whole time. And so it must be in the blood.
Yeah, it must be in the blood. And it sounds like they might be converting some impressionable Texans out there, so that's a good thing.
Absolutely, all their friends, and so they've had bragging rights for a couple of years. So they're just keeping it rolling, which is really fun to see.
And I think I might have seen you and your family maybe from a distance at Dwight Clark Day the other day on 8/7. Were you in town?
We were, it was spectacular. We came in for 87 Day. Obviously, Dwight was a close friend. We have friends with ALS, and so we obviously were supporting it and supporting the whole organization. And I got to say, the York family put on a great day, and I brought the grandsons out. And unbelievably, one of my all-time favorite 49ers who's working in the organization, being a stud on the personnel side, Keena Turner, grabbed me and he said, hey, come on, bring those little guys out on the field. And it was unbelievable. They got to meet Juice. They were so funny. They were yelling Juice, Juice. And then they got to meet Kittle, which of course, they're going crazy for 10 minutes. George was great with them. And then last but not least, they got to meet Brock Purdy, and the little guy was like beside himself. So before he left, he ran up and gave Brock a hug. I'm like, holy cow, this is. But all those guys were so great with the little guys, and you see these guys on the field, and you see them play, and they're tough, and they're physical, and they're intense, but they are just great young men off the field, and I think it just feels great to be able to root for quality people in this league.
Yeah, that's a good point because I noticed that with especially like Fred Warner, he's a beast on the field and then the nicest guy off the field. So it's always a pleasant surprise.
He is. They didn't. I guarantee you, they would love to meet Fred. He didn't come by, and they would love to meet Christian and Debo. And it's funny. I met Fred once, and he is the most genuine, good, easygoing guy. And it's like he's a beast on the field, and it's funny to meet him off the field. What a quality man. And so the organization has to be awful proud because when you've got guys like that, nothing bad can happen.
Yeah. And you mentioned it a minute ago about the great Keena Turner. I grew up in Tracy, so I'd see Keena around, and it makes me wonder, how's your golf game? Have you been out at his golf tournament in the past, or?
So I have in the past, I haven't lately, and my golf game has probably struggled. I there was a time where I was pretty good, but it hasn't been lately. So I have to warm up, probably practice for a few months, and then tell Keena I'm ready to go.
Awesome. Well, speaking of warming up and being ready to go, the Golden Heart Fund, they have a big 5K race on November 2nd. So, am I going to see you at the starting line, or?
So Jim, I got to say this is such a cool thing for 49er fans. And of course, we make it a 4.9K instead of the 5K because it's got to be a 49 in some.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's a great run through Levi Stadium, through the halls, through the
Nice.
sections. It's unbelievable, and it finishes up out on the field. And for big fans and of course little fans, it's so awesome to end up being out on the field and looking up and seeing what your favorite players see every weekend. And it's such a spectacular event. It raises money for the Golden Heart Fund. It's on Saturday morning, November 2nd. It's going to be a blast. I've been there a couple years. I'm not going to be able to be there this year, unfortunately, but we have a very special starter and a former Hall of Fame, former 49er Hall of Famer that's going to be there, the official starter and hanging around, Patrick Willis.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a bunch of former 49ers there. So a great day for fans. If you haven't run a 5K before, don't worry about it. You can jog, you can walk. It is spectacular just to be able to see the stadium like you've never seen it before. And so I just want to encourage all the fans out there to sign up, to show up. It is one heck of a deal. It's only $50. In fact, I'm going to actually throw in a little special discount code so people can save a little bit to go out and show up for your 49ers and your former 49ers. And so it's like you said, it's benefiting the Golden Heart Fund. And I know that you know about that, but we have a lot to say about
Yeah.
what's going on there.
Well, like you said, there's going to be a QR code on the screen. So if you're watching, make sure you check that out. I'm also going to make some posts on social media so people can register and get a cool discount. And like you mentioned, Patrick Willis is going to be in town. So that's got to be great to see, the Golden Heart Fund. I know Dre Greenlaw won the Dwight Clark Award earlier this year, and it brings together current players and alumni. So it's a pretty special bond.
It's a very special bond. And, we started the Golden Heart Fund. A couple guys you've heard of, Ronnie Lott, Harris Barton, and the fourth guy, a linebacker that's just a stud of a leader, a guy by the name of Ron Ferrari, who was a linebacker in the early 80s. He has just been just on fire. And we started this thing over 7 years ago. And Jim, we really felt like there were some guys falling through the cracks as they got older. And so as former players, we wanted to kind of pull ourselves together and tell guys, hey, we're still Niners. We're still part of this core team. And if you ever were a Niner, even if you played for 1 year, you're always a Niner. And so we initially started it. We raised money. We contributed ourselves, and we started helping guys in dire need situation. And it's evolved over the years to not just dire need, but we've really impacted families. Once you retire from the game, a lot of guys struggle. And then down the line, there's obviously issues, physically, mentally, financially. And we established this Golden Heart Fund to be able to be there for former players. And it's really weird because it's not a bunch of board of directors or guys that have never been involved in football. It's former 49ers. And I got to say, the players have responded really well. We've impacted the lives of so many guys, and we continue to. And so the money from the Golden Heart Run on Saturday, November 2nd, goes directly to the Golden Heart Fund, where we are there making an impact in the lives of former 49er players that have kind of, hit a bump in the road
Mhm.
over the long term. And so we like to say it's not a handout, it's a hand up from a teammate, and guys have really responded well to that.
And like you said, it's not just guys talking about it either. People show up. I was there in May, and there was like, I don't know, 30, 40 guys that showed up and were on stage and made an appearance. So people are living it, and everyone's supporting each other. So it just shows the great bond that you have through the Dwight Clark Golden Heart Fund.
Yeah, it really is a special bond, Jim. And over the years, I think it's just great when players, helping their former teammates, and we're all in this thing together. And I think that's really the biggest message that's come out of it. And so this is just one of the events that we do during the year, the run beside, the Dwight Clark celebration. And we have a Dwight Clark Day at the 49ers.
Mhm.
And then we also, of course, have the Dwight Clark Awards that you mentioned. Dre Greenlaw was amazing recipient, and we've just got so many great guys. But guys rally, guys come out to support it, and so it's really a great thing.
And since we're talking about it, I don't mean to ask a loaded question, but I am curious. Do you have a special Dwight Clark memory that kind of comes to mind when you reflect back on him?
Oh man. So I actually have a lot of Dwight Clark memories, but I think early on, one of the greatest was my first year with the team was Dwight's last year, and I remember like calling him Mr. Clark. I mean, you come in, I mean, you're just a, 22, 23-year-old kid, and he's an established superstar. And I was a tight end and he was a receiver, but I loved watching him. I loved the way that he ran routes. And so he would spend extra time helping me with releases, with routes, with the way to set guys up and set players up. And he was such a giving guy. Everybody in the locker room loved Dwight. I mean, he was such a unique guy because it's not that way with every guy. But Dwight had no enemies. He had that Southern draw. He put his arm around you. He was friends with everybody. He was so giving with his time and his attention. And he made so many friends and made it so special. And obviously his legacy continues on.
Yeah. And moving on to the current team, I had some questions. You mentioned George Kittle earlier. Made me wonder, do you wish you could play with a guy like that? Or does he remind you of any people you played with back in your day?
Oh man, so there's not every guy could play back in the old days when there were no rules and it was very physical 100% of the time. George Kittle could do that, and he's such a unique player and such a quality guy. You can tell that there's a lot of energy emanating from him that supports this offense, supports that locker room, just because they look to George kind of to get everybody fired up. And so, one heck of a player, a great guy off the field. He's just one of those guys that you're fortunate to have in the organization because he does so many things. And yeah, he brings it every weekend, and so you really never have to worry about his effort level, his intensity, his focus. He's there 24/7. And so that's kind of the guy that we think could have been playing in the old days.
And I spoke with Steve Young a few months back at Pebble Beach, and I said something like, "What's your favorite show? What do you like to watch these days?" He mentioned Full Swing. So I was wondering, are there any shows that you like to watch that inspire you, where maybe it's not football, but you get pumped up seeing other guys talk about their craft or what they're into sports wise?
It's so much fun to see people that are operating at the highest level of their sport. And I watched Full Swing. It was a great, obviously, series to give you kind of the background on pro golfers and what they go through and how they have to prepare themselves. Um, Going back to football, I loved receiver. I
Yeah.
love the fact that we had Debo and Kittle in it, and it just gives you kind of background into their family, how they prepare, what they're dealing with. And then, of course, Justin Jefferson, what an
Mhm.
awesome pro, and Devontae Adams. I mean, and Amon St. Brown is just, I mean, man, when you look at all those guys and just kind of the way that they bring their craft to the field and what they go through, it's just super impressive. And it makes you realize that they're very unique in this world, operating at the highest levels of their sport. And it kind of gets those old juices flowing, like, yeah, I knew guys just like that, or, hey, I was part of that, and I remember doing this, that, and the other thing. And so it's just it's fantastic. It's been a blast to watch all these shows now, with whether it's Netflix or Amazon Prime or whoever's got things going, the series. Of course, had a chance to watch Joe Montana's series,
Oh
of
yeah.
course, and I mean, that hits home, and it's tough to, find out stuff that you didn't even know about your own quarterback. But there was some real good insights there, and so it makes for a great watching experience, and it kind of gets you fired up, even though you're old.
Well, one thing about the current team I was just curious about was obviously everyone knows what McCaffrey's going through right now. So it made me think, I have my own aches and pains, and it makes me wonder, how did your mindset kind of change as a player? Like when you were younger, did you kind of want to push through, and then maybe as you matured, do you kind of take care of your body more, sit a couple weeks out so you can get the more on the back end?
Jim, it's funny because I kind of feel like when I played, I never really matured. I was always a push through guy, and intense, and do whatever it takes to be on the field. And I kind of felt like I had that mindset my whole career until the very end. And
Mm,
you at age 35, your body starts breaking down a little bit, and you start having injuries that you've never had before, and you realize that you can't play this game forever.
mm,
So, but up until that point, I did anything and everything that I could to stay on the field. And then, of course, the older you get, now it's just like I'm in football. I work out every day. I get massage, and that's just to get out of bed. It's not to get ready for a game. So, I'm still trying to take care of my body and stay in as good a shape as I can.
Yeah, it made me think to ask you that because I got some mysterious back issue overnight, so I'm trying to, work out the kinks.
You get to a certain age, it can just be the way you slept.
Yeah, exactly. Well, one thing I think is cool about you is, like you mentioned earlier, you're a Bay Area guy. You're from San Jose, the land of Jeff Garcia, right? So
Oh
that's
yeah.
kind of cool, right? To then play for the hometown team.
Yeah, I think Jeff and I were one of the very few. If I don't can't name anybody off the top of my head that had been there as long as both of us. But to
Mm,
be able to grow up and go to school and then play in your own backyard professionally was remarkable. And I mean, it's just you know what it's like when the Niners are rolling. The whole Bay
mm.
Area is just thumping with every victory and excited and just into it, and it just makes it so much fun. And I think it was really one of the unique things about my experience with the 49ers is you just connected with the fans on a
Mm.
daily basis. And there was no for the most part there wasn't internet or social media or barely even cell phones. There weren't any smartphones, I promise you that. But guys were just out in the community, just wandering around, going to the grocery store, and you'd interact with people and fans, and it was just wholesome. It was real. It was authentic, and it was one heck of a time, I have to say, way back in the 80s and 90s.
Well, I'm going to the San Jose Sports Hall of Fame media event tomorrow, and you're an inductee from 2005, right? So I'm going to be
I
talking
am.
to, yeah, Mike Holmgren. He's getting inducted. So
I
your old
wish I
coach.
could be there. Yeah, my old coach, and such a dear guy, and of course very deserving. And the San Jose Sports Hall of Fame does such a great job of uh, of including everybody, of getting the right
Mm,
inductees, having a big event, and doing it right. And it's a great honor. There's been just legends
mm.
after legend going in year after year. And it feels like they continually never run out of awesome people to induct. And so it's great for Coach to be getting inducted. He's just, like I said, a dear guy, a great coach, and has had a big impact on the game of football.
And a good mustache too.
And he's got that as well.
Well, one thing that I always find interesting about guests I have on, especially since you're from the Bay Area, I'm always curious growing up, who were your favorite teams and players?
Oh, so you're killing me, Jim, because it's really weird. When I was growing up, the 49ers weren't great. 72 maybe was their best season. They ended up losing in a game against the Cowboys that they're way ahead. But somehow, some way, I was a Cowboy fan
Oh
about the
no.
'87. Yeah, it wasn't oh no. A friend of my mom's was dating Roger Staubach, and
Wow.
he was just starting to come into his own. My dad coached at Campbell High School, since closed, and one of their quarterbacks was Craig Morton. So he was starting for the Cowboys in '70, and Staubach came along, I think, in '71. And so just that connection as a kid. And so I was rooting for the Cowboys. And when Dwight made that catch several years later, I was crushed. I was so bummed. And, 5 years later, I was standing in the huddle
Wow.
next to him going, man, I hated you. But it
Did
was
you ever
really
tell him
funny.
that?
Oh, I did tell him. Yeah, he laughed. He knew. Um, but yeah, and of course, I love the Giants. Had a chance to meet Willie Mays,
Mm,
Bobby Bonds, and
wow.
Willie McCovey, and I mean, obviously, that was a legendary team. For some reason, I like the Cincinnati Reds. Another friend of my mom's was dating Johnny Bench in 1970,
You
so I
had some
had an
connections.
autographed Johnny Bench ball when I was 7 years old, and I was a catcher, and so I love Johnny Bench. And Pete Rose, we just lost him
Mm,
yesterday.
yeah.
Had a chance to meet him, had a chance to meet Johnny, all of the Big Red Machine, which was really interesting. So it's weird, growing up and having all these guys that you admire and just absolutely follow, and then you're older and you get a chance to meet them all, and it's pretty special. And so, of course, I love the Bay Area teams, the Warriors as well. Nate Thurman, Rick
Mm,
Barry. I mean, that was a big deal. And going through the years, it's just, man, I love the A's too,
mm,
ironically. The Giants were probably first, but then the A's, and then the A's were, I mean, they were winning World Series. I mean, it was unbelievable. And so had a chance to experience some pretty special years there. It, and I mean, I hate to say this as a 49er, but the Raiders were pretty dang good too. So they weren't my favorite, but I love the fact that they won, and I was right there, and years later get a chance to know Dave Casper and Fred Bolitnikoff as a dear guy. And I mean, I remember growing up, sometimes pretending to be
mm.
Bolitnikoff. And so, you look at all these things over the years and all these legends that have come through the Bay Area. And man, I took advantage. I have to say, when I was a Niner, I was not holding back. I got to meet Tony La Russa, was
Wow.
down, met some A's, met Giants, loved Barry Bonds, Dusty Baker. I mean, I was not holding back. Billy Bean's a buddy of mine. Like, I just idolized all these guys. And when I was with the 49ers, I was, it wasn't, ironically, it wasn't the same like it is today. There's always football players going to games or basketball games.
Mm,
It didn't used to be like that. So, I mean, it was kind of a special thing in the '80s and '90s, to be in the A's dugout or to go hang out with Dusty and the Giants and, go on the field and do this or that. But I mean, just talking about it, I think, man, that's pretty special to be able to have that opportunity. And so, love all those guys, love all things Bay Area, and we've had some pretty darn special people in our lives for so many years.
yeah, it's definitely true. And you got to experience going to Candlestick then as a fan, obviously, and then you played there. So
It
full
is
circle.
the weirdest thing. I mean, I remember just freezing my butt off at Candlestick for so many baseball games and a couple football games too, but it always felt like baseball was a colder game. I don't know why. Maybe the fog would roll in. And I had seen Candlestick grass, I saw it turf, I saw it back to grass, I saw all the different setups, and then weirdly enough, I spent 11 years on the field there, and so it was pretty remarkable, pretty special. When you put it all together.
Yeah, since you looks like you have a cool backdrop in the office there. Were you able to snag a Candlestick seat to take with you?
So,
Or
so amazingly, I do have
nice.
a couple candlestick seats. My wife was awesome and got them before everything was destroyed. So I got my candlestick seats. I got a ton of stuff. I used to. what I should have done had I known that sports memorabilia was going to go crazy. I used to trade jerseys, and I'd get
Mm.
this. I have some pretty good jerseys over the years. I'd get hockey jerseys and baseball jerseys, and I'd go to autograph sessions, and I'd say, instead of paying me, I'm just going to take some autographed baseball bats. So I have
Nice.
all the home run kings. I have Hall of Famers. I have baseballs. I have footballs. I have jerseys, all kinds of stuff. But had I known it was going to go crazy, man, I would have got game worn jerseys and made them sign them and did all this stuff. But it's special to me just to have those things over the years, and hopefully,
Mm.
my grandsons will appreciate, and they'll want some of the things that I've collected over the years. Of course, by the time they're old enough to know, it'll all be old guys. But man, I gotta say, the Barry Bonds jerseys, the Will Clark jerseys, they better appreciate those.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I thought it was interesting too. Your dad was a high school teacher and football coach. So, was that at the high school you went to? Because you wouldn't be able to get away with anything.
No, and it was not, and I'm glad, because he would have been all over me. But my dad was a quarterback at San Jose State for
Mm.
3 years, and he got drafted by the Raiders. Ironically, at the time, the AFL was happening, so he got drafted by
Mm.
the Pittsburgh Steelers as well.
Wow.
And there was no ESPN. He has the letters that the team sent
Wow.
him saying, "Hey, we drafted you, in the 15th round of this," and he ended up going to camp with the Raiders, and he got hurt. Jim Otto was the center, and that was about the only person that any of us would have ever heard of. But so he was a high school history teacher and a football coach, and so we grew up throwing the ball. Whether it was baseball season, we were throwing it. Whether it was football season, we were throwing and catching. Basketball season, we were playing basketball, like the old days, because there was no internet, there was
Yeah.
nothing else. There was like 5 TV stations. And so your fun was going out and playing ball. And that's what I did basically my whole life. And uh, it actually ended up working out okay.
Yeah. Well, it made me wonder, being a catcher, seeing the ball from that perspective. Do you think that kind of helped you become good with your hands as well, or?
I really do think so, Jim, to
Mm.
be honest. Just the ability to kind of see it in, when you're trying to catch balls in the dirt or block balls, or looking at the spin on the ball, curveball, slider, versus a fastball, and what's going on, and just kind of seeing and moving and anticipating where the ball's going to
Mm.
be. I think that became a big part of me being able to catch the ball out on the field.
Well, you have three Super Bowl rings, right? So made me wonder. I always like to ask, what do you do with yours? Are they on lockdown? How do you deal with it?
Great question. So I have them, Jim. I have them in a safe, and I used to wear them a lot. The older you get, you wear them some.
Mm.
I will say this: I like our Super Bowl ring era more than the current. It feels like the rings nowadays are so big, they don't
Yeah.
even look like a ring. It looks like a big brooch or something that you're
Mm.
wearing on your finger. But to think back and go, wow, I played in 3 of those, and I was in the winning locker room celebrating and so excited. And then the competitor in me always comes out, and I think, man, I should have had 5 or 6. Like we lost games in the NFC Championship game that we should have won. And I played in 7, and so I ended up losing 4,
Mm.
which sounds horrible, and it feels horrible. But at least 2 of those we probably should have won, and maybe even 3. But you can't go back. But it's still, I think, man, 3 Super Bowl rings is awesome, but 5 would even be a little better.
Well, do you have a special one? Because I know Jerry Rice rocks the turquoise one. I don't know which year that is, but he
Oh my
he always
gosh.
has that.
He's just a little more flashy than me. Um, Obviously, the most recent one has the most diamonds, because the league
Mm.
allocates diamonds by how many Super Bowl wins your organization has.
Oh
And
wow.
so, fortunately, we won the third, fourth, and fifth. So some of these teams win their first Super Bowl, and like it looks like diamond dust on there. It's like, are those even diamonds? And so the first one probably means the most,
Mm.
because as a kid, you grow up, you watch the celebrations in the locker room, and you think, man, what would it like to be there? And then winning that first one was so special, because that was a game against the Bengals that we thought we had. they came back and scored in the last couple minutes, and then Joe took us on that, 92-yard drive, and the great pass to John Taylor at the end. So the elation to go from thinking you're going to lose to thinking you're
Mm,
to winning is remarkable, and just the experience to know what it was like in the locker room, to feel that feeling, and to know that you're going to actually get a Super Bowl ring. It's pretty mind blowing to kind of step back and go, gosh, I remember being 7 years old and watching, TV, and they'd show the locker room and how
mhm,
guys were so excited and emotional, and to have that feeling in that game was pretty special. The next two Super Bowls for us were blowouts, and so I which was great. I'd much rather win like that, but they were we were kicking around in the third quarter, going, okay, hey, when is this game going to end? Because
yeah.
we won, and so yeah, that's probably the first one was the most special.
Well, before you got to the Super Bowls, you had your first regular season game debut right at Lambeau Field, and I'm going there in November for the Niner game, so I'm pumped. So, what's your memories when you reflect on that first game
Gee,
for
that
you?
is so great. So I was on injured reserve. They activated me and they said, "Hey, you know what? You're ready for the game in Green Bay." And it's like, whoa! Like I had to go home, pack. The next day, we're getting on a plane and going back to Lambeau, which is so special. And for me, it was all blur. I remember it being cold, and I remember catching a ball or two from Joe in that game, and you know to be on the team, to be on the field, to catch a pass. I mean, that is just, it's mind boggling. And for me, Green Bay is really where football started, and I know technically that's not true, but all those Packers teams, Lombardi,
Mm.
Bart Starr, all those things over the years. And it's so awesome that you're going back, because I've told my wife this now. I'm almost 62 years old, and I said, the last couple of years, I told her, I said, we got to go to a Green Bay game. She's like, why? I go, because that's football. And I go, but we have to go like in December, because you got to sit in the stands, and you got to have a brat, and you got to feel, you got to be able to see your breath, and you got to just and and experience it. And so go to the Packer Hall of Fame, just
Mm.
take it all in. So I'm jealous, Jim, because and maybe I'll adjust my schedule and go with the Niners. Of course, that'll probably wreck it for me, because I'll be distracted worrying about the game. I'd love to go see like the Packers and the Lions, and just
Mm.
what care about good football and not worry about who's winning or who's doing
Yeah.
what, so I can just relax and enjoy the experience.
Well, I'll look for you in the stands. Okay.
Okay, I'll let you know if I'm coming.
Yeah. Well, you came right after John Frank, right? So I was wondering, did he take you under his wing, or?
So it was interesting. So John, I played in '87 with John, and '88. He broke his hand at the very beginning of the season, and he came back toward the last half. But he was so focused on being a surgeon, it was really weird. So obviously, tight ends, you're a tight knit group, and you're with each other, so everybody shares best practices, and he obviously was just like Russ Francis before him, and he was just such a solid guy. And it was weird, because it was like a flash, and all of a sudden he was gone. His doctor told him that if he ever did hurt his hand again, he would never be able to be a surgeon,
Mm.
and he was thinking long term, and so he retired. And all of a sudden, bang! I was in there, and it's like, whoa, what happened? So yeah, a really good guy. I've talked to him here in the last couple of years. It's always good, you know, talking to your old buddies, and he's been very successful on the doctor side. So he probably made the best long-term decision for sure.
Well, yeah, he's a plastic surgeon, right? So if you play your
Yes.
cards right, you can look pretty these days.
There you go. Dude, yeah. Hopefully he likes me.
Yeah.
Don't want to do a little mistake.
Well, it made me wonder, football's not quite as a grind in terms of daily games like baseball and basketball, even. So it made me wonder, did you have like a group of guys that went out for team dinners, or what was that kind of like when you're on the road?
There was always a group of guys who would go out to dinner, and you know what? It could be a different group. For me, it was probably Steve Young, Harris Barton, sometimes Frank Pollock, one of our other
Mm.
linemen. Um, you know, the receivers, they kind of kept to themselves. The defensive guys all were big cliques. Those guys all hung out together. So they weren't inviting anybody along usually. But yeah, we'd always have guys, and it was always fun going on the road. Um, just just kind of, the old mindset, us against the world. We were
Yeah.
really, really great on the road as a unit. Our overall winning percentage. I mean, we took the business very seriously, and I think a lot of it started with Bill Walsh.
Mm.
We'd fly on Fridays instead of Saturdays, and so we get in a day early, and we'd be 100% focused on the game plan, on what we were doing. And I kind of think that mindset really helped us over the years win a lot of games on the road.
Was Bill Walsh ever like a funny guy? I thought I heard a story about him writing stuff on the board, or was he kind of funny, or was he intense?
Well, mostly he was intense, but every now and then he would be funny, but it would be rare. But when he was funny, he was really witty and had a great dry sense of humor. But during the course of a season, it wouldn't come out all the
Mm.
time. So maybe 4 or 5 times a year, but you'd enjoy the heck out of it because it would be like, it'd be like Bill Belichick cracking jokes. It's just
Okay.
out of character.
Yeah. Well, do you guys still get together for like FaceTimes or text threads with your old teammates? Or I imagine the Golden Heart Fund probably helps keep everyone in touch anyway, right?
So the Golden Heart Fund does do a good job, and the 49ers themselves, there's a great alumni network. Once a year, we have a alumni day, so guys come back for that. And so I think it's interestingly enough, Jim, when we played, like guys didn't have cell phones. So you didn't have guys, nobody had emails. You didn't have guys' contact information. So by the time everybody left football, like you didn't know where guys were. You didn't know where they ended up. And so we have
Uh,
guys all across the country. And it's so fun because when you see a guy at alumni day or you reach out and you see him on FaceTime and you talk, of course, we're all a little older, but you go right back to those days. And everybody, you had nicknames for guys or you talked about certain experiences, and it's like you're right back where you were 30 years ago. And it's super special. It's a bond unlike any other. And so I think guys know kind of what they've all been through, and it makes it special, especially the older guys. We used to have to go to training camp in Rockland for 4 or 5 weeks, and it was miserable. But the bonding was great, the team bonding, and so you just went through and you made it through, and I think that was a big part of our success over the years.
Well, it makes me think then in the moment because my friend from work, he went on a flight there to Ireland and he randomly saw an old retired guy on the same plane. So it made me wonder, have you ever had that happen with old teammates, like a non-NFL related event and you look over and see a guy that you used to play with?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, have had that a couple times. Had it years ago with Dwight Clark,
Oh,
ironically, on a flight to North Carolina. My daughter played soccer back there, and all of a sudden, wait a second, what are you doing right there? And it's pretty funny. Yeah, I've had one or two of those experiences over the years,
wow.
or even some other guys from the NFL. Yeah, I was on a flight, and all of a sudden, Michael Irvin came bopping down the thing and sat right in front of me. I'm like, what are you doing?
Oh,
And
that's
so
awesome.
yeah, it's kind of funny.
Well, I know that in your career you never had a losing season, right? And you had one of the highest winning percentages in the NFL. So it just made me wonder, does that transfer over when you're at the casino or?
Man, I wish it's funny because you think you know what you're doing, and I follow football very closely. But I got to say the Vegas odds makers are fantastic. They know what they're doing, and if you're just picking the winning team, that would be a lot easier. But playing with the point spread
Yeah.
um, can really mess you up, and some unnatural things happen with late field goals or teams just giving up extra points at the end. And I realized early on I was super competitive. And when I got out of football and I could say, oh, yeah, I can pick games, like
Mm.
I might focus on one game a week and say, yeah, I know what's going on there. But I realized the odds are not in my favor. So I tried to pull off the gambling. I've got a couple buddies that bet games on weekends, and they always call me and go, what do you think in this game? And I'm like, I always give the disclaimer, like, you know, I've watched this team 4 times and I know what they're going to do, but there's always this caveat
Mm.
and the spread, it could be a sucker spread. And I'm, you know, a long way of saying I'm not big into betting it
Yeah.
because I know that I would get engaged too quickly. So I kind of just stay away. Come playoff time, I might pick a team or two that try to win the Super Bowl or something like that. But outside of that, man, I wish I was as smart as I thought I was.
Well, that's funny because that happened to me in week 2. I was up in Lake Tahoe and I had 3 teams pick to win. They're all automatics, no brainer, and then one team, doesn't follow through. The Patriots screwed me over, then I lose the whole parlay. So I know not to
Jim,
bet either.
this is what I've told all my buddies. Whatever you do not bet in the first month of the season
Mm,
because there's so many variables. Nobody has gone hard through training camp. Everybody is just basically getting into football shape
mm,
the first month of the season, maybe 5 weeks. And so upsets can happen, crazy stuff can happen. Obvious winners lose to obvious losers. And so I said, I would never, it's like the preseason. I would never
yeah,
bet the first month of the season because there's, you don't know who's healthy, who's not. Feels like there's so many more injuries
yeah,
this year than I can remember. And so it's not the smartest time to, unless you're going to pick a huge underdog, maybe that's
yeah.
a good time.
Well, speaking of odds, I had Eric Wright on a few months back at the Keena Turner golf tournament, and he had mentioned how you guys would get pumped up whenever Tony Lindsay would sing the national anthem because he said you guys always seem to win when he sang. So does that
I
bring back any memories?
Oh yeah, there are always some guys that had the great victory streak going. So I know Tony was one. We'd always have Boys to Men in the
Mm,
playoffs. We'd have the Starship during the year and Huey Lewis. I mean, they hardly ever lost. We had Journey a couple times,
mm.
but the thing is, almost anybody would sing they hardly ever lost because we were
That's
winning all the time. So
a good point.
but it is funny because so George Seifert was very superstitious. So I promise you, I'd love to go back and ask him. But I promise if somebody sang and we lost and played bad, he would never allow them to come back.
Oh,
so
that's funny.
so I don't know who those people are, but I'm guarantee you they're out there.
Well, it makes me wonder. I ask everyone I have on, what kind of music are you into, and who was your very first concert?
Ooh, let's see. So um, I'm kind of into this is weird. I'm into classic rock, and because I moved to Texas, I've seen a lot of country acts. So I've gotten more and more into country over the years. My very first concert was in San Jose at Spartan Stadium. It was the Doobie Brothers, and it's
Ah,
wild. They're still playing.
yeah. Listen to the music.
There you go. I was there, and I was probably like in 6th grade. I don't even know how my parents let me go, but I was there, and it was great.
Awesome. Well, it makes you wonder. You're such a good, talkative guy, easy to get to know. Where does that come from? Is that from your parents, or have you always been that way, or did it come out later on?
You know, Jim, it's weird. My parents, both have a lot of personality. I was a kid in school that was afraid to do oral reports, was afraid
Mm,
to get up in front of everybody and speak. And I wasn't really good at it, and I didn't really do it. And I think I started learning a little bit more in college and having to do it. And then with the 49ers, when you say you'd have an interview, I'd be like,
mm,
oh, what am I going to say? And you just get used to doing it and get used to speaking. And I've done a lot of events, spoken in a lot of churches, youth
mm.
groups, Boy Scouts, a million different things. And so I think you just get to a point where you get comfortable with it. But if you'd have told me, when I was in high school that I would be able to speak, I would have said, no way. Like I'm never doing that. But I guess it's just time. You just get comfortable, and it's fun to share your experience with others.
That's a good answer. And I got to cover my first NFL game a couple days ago. I was at Levi's, and it makes me wonder, like when you're there and you got the hype and the energy. I was down on the field, which was awesome before the game. When you're retired and you go to like Dwight Clark Day and you're at practice, or you get passes and you're at a game, does that kind of get the juices flowing again?
Jim, it really does. There's nothing like being on the field. And I wish every fan could experience it. And it's great to be on the field before the game and you see how big the guys are and you kind of see how they're moving. But there's nothing like being on the field during the game. The intensity, the physicality of the game is so different. And we're talking about, 100 feet difference between the stands and being right there. It doesn't necessarily translate to TV. Sometimes it does, but man, the speed and tenacity and velocity that happened, uh, on a big hit is pretty remarkable and it's hard to describe. And so I do get fired up. There's nothing like being at even going to a practice and watching guys run into each other. It's like all of it comes rushing back and you feel like, wow, I'm back in the mix. I wish I could experience that every week. But it's cool. It's great that you were down on the field because as you know, it's a completely different perspective than
Yeah.
watching on TV or sitting up in the stands.
And then Keena walked by. I was like, all right, this is cool. I like this.
Yeah, Keena's the man. He's like the mayor of the
Yeah.
49ers. And he's done, it's great. He was such a great linebacker, and I think
Mm,
people forget, he's a Pro Bowl linebacker, had unbelievable speed, had one heck of a career, had, all those Super Bowl rings, and then was super successful on the player side, on the alumni side, and he just has a great eye for talent. And he
mm,
went into the personnel side, and he's done great. And there should be more stories about him because people
yeah.
don't realize, what a super stud that guy has been, and his football life is remarkable. I mean, it's been going on for 40 plus years, and pretty special guy, and we're lucky to have him.
Needs to write a book.
He should.
Well, it makes me wonder real quick. You mentioned about seeing the game up close on the field and the big hits and whatnot. And I like asking baseball players, like pitchers, like, was there anybody out there that just had your number? Like they'd always get hits off you, you couldn't figure them out. Was there any defenders out there that always had your number, it always hit you hard and drove you nuts?
It's funny because I don't think about um, specific guys, but I do think about specific teams.
Mm,
Um, One of the most underrated teams of all time was the New Orleans Saints
mm,
in the early 90s. They had one of the best, most physical defenses around, and their offense was dog meat, so they could never win games. They'd score like 10 or 13 points a game, and their defense was great, and they had four spectacular linebackers that could and should probably all be in the Hall of Fame.
mm,
Vaughn Johnson, Ricky Jackson, who is in, Pat Swilling, and Sam Mills, who's in. And th- going against those guys would just be a beatdown because I'd have to play them twice a year. And so physically, that was the game that I would come out of feeling the worst. So those guys, we beat them most of the times, but physically, I would just be abused after those games because those guys would knock the crap out of you. Just any play, like you would feel it that
mm.
much more than any team we played. And so those guys were really special. The Rams were dang good too back then, and we'd have to play them a couple times a year, and had to go against Kevin Green twice a
Mm.
year early in his career when he didn't go to the Steelers, I think, until 93 or 94. But yeah, those guys would hit you too. But it wasn't just one guy. It was just a team of guys.
Well, that's great. It's been fun to reflect with you, and I am curious. I think it's what 7:50 your time. So, did you eat dinner yet, or do you cook
I
dinner?
ate dinner, Jim. I'm good. I like your typical time. I'd be in bed if we were starting at 8 o'clock. It'd be 10 o'clock here and be like, okay, man, I'm old. I got up early to work out. But
Okay.
yeah, no, had dinner already. I was fired up to meet you. Heard a lot of great things about you, and it's an honor to be on your podcast. You're a stud.
Well, yeah, it's an honor to have you on. I was excited to have you on, and makes you wonder though, real quick, since it is evening, do you wind down with a little Golden Bachelor, or what kind of shows are you into?
Golden Bastard. That is hilarious. Well, I watched it once. Like the first season. I'm like, that guy's a doofus. And even
Gary.
my wife doesn't. Yeah, we're probably more Dateline,
Mm,
cop shows, Netflix movies, series. You know what? It's weird. We watched Suits, and we never were going to
Mm.
watch Suits, but I watched it. We watched the whole thing, my wife and I, and we finished like a month ago. And I just told her the other day, like, I don't even know what to do without Suits because I mean, it was we'd watch like 3 or 4 episodes every night, and now nothing. So we got to get into a new series.
You got to get into Ozark then.
Oh, I've seen Ozarks.
Okay, so you know.
We do.
Okay.
We know it well.
Well, one last one I'll throw at you then. You got to get into Love is Blind. You might think it's corny, but it gets you hooked.
Okay, I'll take your word for it.
All right. Well, Brent, as we wrap up here, I'm just going to say it one more time. Everyone, click on the barcode that we have on the screen or check the link for the Golden Heart Run. And it's going to be November 2nd at Levi Stadium. And we're going to see Patrick Willis out there.
Oh, I got to give my special code, Jim.
Oh, yeah. Give the code.
B Jones fired up. All one word, 10. B Jones fired up 10. Give you a little 10% discount. It's not a huge amount of money, but hey, we're all trying to save a little bit. It's a great event. You're going to have a blast out there. See Patrick Willis run through the stadium, be on the field, or walk through the stadium if need be. But it's a cool event, a lot of players, and it's going to a great cause.
Yeah, going to a great cause. And Brent, thanks again. I hope one of these days we can meet up in person, and it was great having you on.
Jim, that would be an honor of mine. Look forward to it.